This podcast is sponsored by Anchor. If you haven't heard about Anchor, it is the easiest way to make a podcast. Let me explain. It's free. Free free. There's also creation tools that allows you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer. Anchor will then distribute your podcast for you so it can be heard on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and many more platforms. You can make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership. It's everything you need to make a podcast in one place. I actually use Anchor for this podcast, and it has saved me a lot of time and energy because everything is consolidated in one place. It just makes it so much easier. So if you're interested in doing the same thing, download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. Once again, you can download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. Hey y'all, my name is Christian. I'm a millennial, and this is the Millennial Mind. Millennials get a bad rep for being lazy, non-productive members of society. They are also told that their opinions are warped and that they don't matter. This podcast is designed to express an opinion, but from a millennial's perspective. We will talk about everything from love and relationships to pop culture to pretty much everything that comes to mind. Come join me on this journey of speaking my mind, and I hope that all of you are speaking your mind as well. Hey y'all, welcome to another episode of the Millennial Mind. Thank you so much for joining me on this journey of speaking my mind, and I hope that all of you are speaking your mind as well. So I hope you guys listened to last week's episode because this week's episode is going to be a continuation. As you all know, this is Black History Month. So what I like to do is set this time aside for the whole month to honor the heroes of Black history, and more specifically, heroes that we don't usually hear too much of. What I decided to do differently this year was to highlight also some of the main heroes of Black history, because maybe some of my listeners do not know who the main heroes of Black history are, and that's fine. So I wanted to do at least one highlight for one well-known hero of Black History Month, and then kind of discuss some unknown facts about that individual. Okay, so we'll start off with that first. We'll start out with one of the main heroes of Black history, and then we'll go into our unsung heroes. So the main hero that I would like to highlight for this week in honor of Black history is Malcom X. Now, Malcom X, if you really want to know who Malcom X is, Malcom X is pretty much the liberal version of Martin Luther King. That's the best way I can describe it. They were opposite in that respect. Martin Luther King at one point believed in segregation. Martin Luther King at one point believed in integration. But Malcom X was strictly against it. I know Martin Luther King changed his mind towards the end of his life, but for the majority of his career as a civil rights activist, he did not believe in segregation. He was for integration. Malcom X was like, no, blacks and whites needs to be separate. Let's do the segregation. I'm fine with that. Separate but equal. That's what we want. Okay. So yes, Malcom X was the complete opposite of Martin Luther King. And we know that, and we've seen the movie, at least I know some of us have, some of us may not have. So if you haven't seen it, make sure you see it. Denzel Washington plays Malcom X, does a phenomenal job. So we may have like the basic foundation of Malcolm X, but I don't think we know everything there is to know about him. At least I don't. So here are a few unknown facts about Malcolm X that I think are interesting. Okay, the first one is that white supremacist groups targeted his father. So his father, Reverend Earl Litter, was a supporter of the Pan-African leader Marcus Garvey, which that caught the attention of the Ku Klux Klan and other white supremacist groups. So his father, who was a Baptist minister, was constantly under threat by these white supremacist groups. Another fact is that a white teacher, discouraged his ambitions. So Malcolm X, he was pretty smart in school, and his 8th grade teacher discouraged him from pursuing his interest in becoming a lawyer. The teacher suggested that carpentry was a more realistic goal for Malcolm X, and this prompted Malcolm X to quit school and become a hustler, which that's interesting. I didn't know that he wanted to be a lawyer. So that just shows how words, they are powerful. So let's be careful about what we say to other people. He was heavily surveillanced by the FBI. So during one of his many prison stints, Malcolm X penned a letter to President Harry Truman declaring himself a communist who opposed the Korean War. So yes, complete opposite from Martin Luther King, if you can see what I'm saying. So of course, this caught the attention of the FBI, which began surveillance of Malcolm X that continued for the rest of his life. Okay. Another fact was that he memorized the dictionary. So his awakening came while serving a prison sentence. So he worked really hard to improve his reading and writing skills. To that end, he tried to memorize the dictionary and improve his penmanship by copying entire pages. I guess while you're in prison, you don't have nothing else to do, so why not learn words and make yourself more educated? Ain't nothing wrong with that. The next unknown fact for him is that his name, Malcolm X, was actually a slave name. So he wanted to make a clean break from white European culture. You know, his last name was Little. So he dropped his last name, which he said was his slave name, and replaced it with the letter X. So Little was his slave name, because of course as slaves you took on the name of your master. So he wanted to drop that and replace that name with X, which that's interesting. Let's do one more fact. Let's do one more fact for Malcolm X. This is pertaining to his assassination. So the growing hostility between the Nation of Islam and Malcolm X ended with gunmen fatally shooting him at the Audubon Ballroom on February 21st, 1965 in Harlem. So we all know where that he was assassinated, but I just didn't know where he was assassinated. And it looks like it was in public, which is horrible. So there you have it. Those are some unknown facts about Malcolm X. Maybe you knew him, maybe you didn't. I know I didn't know any of these facts because this is something that we don't really learn in school. So thank God for Google, where we're able to look up these facts for ourselves and learn something that we never learned in school. Okay, so we're going to take a quick break. What is wrong with my tongue today? Oh my goodness, I'm sorry, y'all. But let's take a quick break and we're going to hear a word from our sponsor, and then we'll continue with the unsung heroes of Black history. Stay tuned. Okay, so I wanted to talk to you guys a little bit about Goalie Gummies. Now, we all know that apple cider vinegar is the new health kick right now, okay? So you're supposed to take a shot or two in the morning. Some people take it 3 times a day. And you're supposed to get a lot of health benefits, such as losing weight, appetite control, etc. If you guys have ever taken apple cider vinegar shots, it is a very strong taste, okay? It's a very strong taste. It burns your throat when it goes down, just a whole 9. I used to take apple cider vinegar shots as well, and I just got sick of the taste. So I tried to find an alternative to it where I wouldn't lose the benefits, but the taste would be a little bit better. That's when I found out about Goalie Gummies. Now, Goalie Gummies, they are little gummies that has apple cider vinegar in it, and you get all of the same benefits of an apple cider vinegar shot. So the appetite control, the weight loss, etc. It's really tasty, so you don't have that burning sensation that's going down your throat every time you consume it. It's amazing. It comes in nice little packaging. They also have, you can also get an individual bottle if you want to try it, or you could do the 1-month supply, 3-month supply, or even a 5-month supply of these gummies. I take them every day and I love them. I try not to eat them as candy because they're just that good. If you want to take advantage of these gummies, I do have a special promo code for my listeners. You can go to go.goalie.com/cfuller to get an additional 5% off your purchase. And there is nothing wrong with additional savings. I will take whatever I can get. So if you want to take advantage of these gummies, go to go.goalie.com/cfuller to get additional savings. Hey y'all, welcome back. Okay, let's discuss the unsung heroes of the Civil Rights Movement or Black History Month. The first one is Rev Dr. Anna Murray. Her writings were the cornerstone of Brown versus Board of Education of Topeka, the 1954 Supreme Court case that ended school segregation. But the lawyer, Episcopal priest, pioneering civil rights activist, and co-founder of the National Organization for Women wouldn't be made aware of that extraordinary accomplishment until a decade after the fact. In 1944, Murray was the only woman enrolled at Howard Law School and at the top of her class. Okay, girl power. While discussing Jim Crow laws, Murray had an idea. Why not challenge the separate but equal legal doctrine and argue that segregation was unconstitutional? This theory became the basis of her 1950 book, States' Laws on Race and Color, which NAACP attorney Thurgood Marshall called the Bible of Brown versus Board of Education. In 1965, Murray and Mary O. Eastwood co-authored the essay Jane Crow and the Law, which argued that the Equal Protection Clause in the 14th Amendment should be applied to sex discrimination as well. In 1971, a young lawyer named Ruth Bader Ginsburg, God bless her soul, successfully argued this point in Reed versus Reed in front of the Supreme Court. Murray was named as a co-author on the brief. Oh, look at that. Murray died in 1985, and in the decades since, public awareness of her many contributions has only continued to grow. Murray was sanctioned by the Episcopal Church in 2012. A residential college at Yale was named in her honor in 2017, and she has become an LGBTQ icon, thanks in part to the progressive approach to gender fluidity that she personally expressed throughout her life. Despite all this, as she wrote in the essay, The Liberation of Black Women in 1970, if anyone should ask a Negro woman in America what has been her greatest achievement, her honest answer would be, I survived. Okay, so I'm not sure why Reverend Dr. Anna Murray was not really recognized with the many contributions that she made. But hopefully she's getting the recognition that she deserved. I wish she would have gotten it during her life, but hopefully she's getting the recognition now. But it seemed like she was a powerhouse. Girl power all the way. Okay, let's continue. There is also Mamie Till Mobley. So Mamie Till Mobley's story is one of triumph in the face of tragedy. Though she never sought to be an activist, her resolve inspired the civil rights movement and broke the emotional chains of Jim Crow, the Reverend Jesse Jackson would remark upon her death. On August 28, 1955, Mobley's 14-year-old son, Emmett Till, was brutally murdered in Money, Mississippi, by two white men who claimed that Till had wolf whistled at one of their wives. When Till's mutilated corpse was found 3 days later in the Tallahatchie River, Mississippi officials tried to dispose of the body quickly, but Mobley obtained a court order to have her only child's remains returned to Chicago. Though his casket arrived padlocked and sealed with the state seal of Mississippi, Mobley insisted that her son's brutalized body be displayed during his funeral. "I want the world to see what they did to my boy," the grieving mother explained. Mrs. Mobley did a profound strategic thing, Jackson later told the New York Times. More than 100,000 people saw his body lying in that casket, at the time the largest single civil rights demonstration in American history. Until her death in 2003 at the age of 81, Mobley advocated for underprivileged children and against racial injustice. Although she never got justice for her son, his murderers were acquitted by an all-white male jury. Mobley didn't let it dampen her spirit. As she told a reporter, "I have not spent 1 minute hating." Now, if you guys do not know the story of Emmett Till, just look it up. They actually have pictures of what they did to her son. It's just, there's no words to describe it. It's just disgusting. It's hateful. It's just unimaginable. And this woman was very strong to not only see her son like that, but to also allow hundreds of thousands of people to see her son like that, to show what racism and hatred does. It produces things like this, which costs the life of her 14-year-old son. She also has a book. And what I'll do is I'll put it in the show notes because I don't remember the name of the book offhand. But she wrote a book about her experience, and she goes into details about the whole experience and how she got to the point of deciding to have an open casket funeral for her son that was displayed to the public. And if you have not read that book, read it. And I will put the name of the book in the show notes. Okay, let's do one more person. How does that sound, you guys? Yes, let's do one more person. Okay, so our last unsung hero of Black History Month, at least for this week, is Diane Nash. So she's a Chicago native. She hadn't experienced the shock of desegregation within the Jim Crow South until she attended Fisk University in Nashville, Tennessee. The whites-only signs scattered throughout Nashville inspired Nash to become the chairperson of the Student Nonviolent Coordination Committee, also known as SNCC, in 1960, where she organized sit-ins at segregated lunch counters throughout Nashville. Nash kept the group's commitment to nonviolence front and center at the sit-ins, which proved very effective in ending the discriminatory practices within the restaurants. The following year, Nash took over responsibility for the Freedom Rides, a protest against segregated bus terminals that took place on Greyhound buses from Washington, D.C. to Virginia. The Freedom Rides, which were initially organized by the Congress of Racial Equality, also known as CORE, encountered a mob of angry segregationists as they entered Anniston, Alabama, and were brutally beaten and unable to finish the route. SNCC, under the direction of Nash, continued the protest from Birmingham, Alabama to Jackson, Mississippi. Before setting off with a group of 10 students from Nashville, Nash received a call from John Siegenthaler, that's a word, Siegenthaler, assistant to Attorney General Robert Kennedy Jr., who tried to persuade her to end the freedom rides, insisting the bloodshed will only continue if they persisted. Nash, unshaken by the stance of the White House, told Siegenthaler that they knew the risks involved and had already prepared their wills before continuing the freedom rides. Wow. Nash later moved back to Chicago and went on to serve as an advocate for fair housing practices. Her contributions to the success of civil rights movement have been increasingly recognized in the years since. In 1995, historian David Halberstam described Nash as bright, focused, utterly fearless, with an unerring instinct for the correct tactical move at each increment of the crisis. Wait a minute. She said she knew the risk. She already had the will, her will prepared before continuing the freedom rides. Talk about courage. Talk about bravery. She was ready, okay? She was ready. Lord knows that they placed the right people in, God placed the right people in the right era, because I could not. I could not at all. That would have been too much. Well, what did you guys think about those unsung heroes? Let me know. Let me know via email at mindofmillennials@gmail.com. You can also or make sure to like our Facebook page, The Millennial Mind, and our Instagram page, _Millennial Mind. Also, I have a blog, so make sure you guys read the posts that are on there. It's at christianfuller.com/blog. Also, just to let you guys know, I will have a new podcast coming out that I'm co-hosting with one of my good friends, Justice Sorrows. And it's going to be called Dear Black Jesus. Basically a podcast where we discuss everything. So we kind of share our opinions on every kind of topic, from life, relationships, pursuit of happiness, all of it, okay? No matter how ratchet it may be. So make sure you like our Instagram page, dear_black_Jesus on Instagram, for more information. That podcast will be launching in the spring. And of course, I have a quote for you guys that I want to share with you all. And this is from Duke Ellington. He says, life has two rules. Number one, never quit. Number two, always remember rule number one. Thank you, Duke Ellington. So simple, yet so gratifying to hear. Okay, y'all, I hope you all enjoyed this episode. Until next week, I will talk to you guys soon.